So an unexpected incoming. So let's do a video on it. The video will look at why this particular watch, why now, the search, a very brief unboxing, there is a small twist at the end, and then conclusions. I will do a more detailed review once I've had the watch for a couple of weeks, and a little bit out of that honeymoon period, and a bit more subjective, and I can compare and contrast it to some other watches that I've had as well. So why this watch? So about 9 years ago, I went into London with my wife, and we went to a Rolex boutique. I believe it was on Bond Street or Regent Street, and I tried on the 216570, and I loved everything about that watch apart from the size. It just wore very, very large on the wrist. It's got a big, expansive white dial. There isn't really anything to break up the case, because obviously it's a steel case into a steel bezel, as opposed to having any kind of different coloured bezel to break up the size, the visual size of the watch. But I loved the colour, I loved the functionality. I just absolutely adored the watch. The fact that it didn't have polished centre links and so on and so forth. I actually tried one on about 2 years later again, just to see if I'd made the right decision or not, and again came to the same conclusion. My barber actually had the watch for a number of years. I tried on his a few times and I kept coming to the same conclusion. I loved the watch, but it was just too big visually for me to wear. But following that, I did obviously start doing some research, and I found the 16570. The issue with that for me at the time was that I didn't want a vintage watch. I didn't want the fragility of a vintage watch, and I hadn't researched it properly. I just saw that it was relatively old when I was looking at it, and obviously they'd had the more modern ones, and they had the more modern clasps at that point. They had the solid bracelets at that point, and I was like, oh, why do I want to spend that much money for a lesser quality watch? So I prefer the dimensions of this. Never tried one on, but in theory prefer the dimensions, but didn't actually ever get as far as finding one, investigating it, and trying one on. So bear with me. So yeah, that was a really good, but also kind of disappointing experience. I did try to scratch the itch with a Zelos Horizons GMT Frost Edition. I have videos on my channel about that. But anyone who knows about trying to scratch an itch of one watch with another, it just never works. You can't buy a watch when you want another watch and hope it will achieve the same goal. It just doesn't. And obviously price points different, quality's different, especially at the levels I was talking about. So I sold that watch very quickly, and again came to the conclusion that at some point I just need to own one of these watches, whether it was the 21650 or the 16570. So I basically put both of them on my Chrono 24 followed watches list, and just watched prices over the years and kind of see what happened. So why now? Again, if you follow my channel, you'll know that I sold a Mark 18 Le Petit Prince a couple of years ago now, maybe. And that got me 3,800 quid. And I sold a Pelagos 39 recently, that got me 2,800. And I've also sold my car a year, or no, 7 months ahead of where I thought I would. So I've got an influx of cash, and I thought, well, let's just do it. Let's just scratch the itch and see what all the fuss is about, and see if it actually is a watch that I really do genuinely want. I've been lusting after it for so long. Is the chase the more exciting part, or do I actually want this watch? So yeah, that's. Is that it? Yeah, that's basically the reasons. Oh, and the pandemic, of course. Prices went crazy, obviously, as everyone knows, over the pandemic, and they're starting to fall. They're not back to where they were pre-pandemic. I'm not sure if they'll get there. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But they've come back to a reasonable price. Obviously, they went stupid over the pandemic, and I wasn't going to pay that price. It was very obvious things were going to crash at some point. So not only have I got the money in my account, but also the watches have come down in price. So the search, let's go on to the search. I did have an opportunity to buy a brand new, unworn, fully stickered 216570 for £500 more. So it was 8,000 for £500 more than a 16570 that I was also looking at. So that was £7,500. I'm not going to lie, that was very tempting. £500 difference, but a brand new stickered watch. I had to think back about why I hadn't got one already, so I did put that to the back of my mind, and my search for the 16570 continued, but that was very, very tempting. I put wanted on Facebook, I put wanted on obviously specific Facebook groups, I put wanted on forums, and I went to specific kind of recommended dealers as well, like Blowers, hopefully most people know them, Hayward's, a very well recommended dealer, and a few others as well. And I quickly realised that buying a vintage or older, out of production Rolex is a bit like buying a Porsche. You think you want a Cayman, so you think your search has got 100 cars, and then you go, oh, I don't want a 986 or 987, I want a 981, and I want an S, and I want sports chrono, I want Porsche sports exhaust, and I want sports seats, and suddenly it goes from like 100 cars to like 10 cars. And that's exactly what happened with this watch. I had when I went down the rabbit hole, I kind of went, right, what I really want are solid end links to give the bracelet as solid as feeling possible. I wanted the solid case, I didn't want the drilled lugs. I wanted the 3186 movement, not the 3185 movement, because that gives you the paragram hairspring. It tightens up the gear train, so you get rid of some of the wiggle, which if anyone knows about these watches, you'll know that when you set the time, you get some wiggle. And it makes it more shock resistant and more resistant to temperature fluctuations. I wanted super luminova because it works. I didn't want tritium. I wanted a full set. It had to be in as good a condition as possible, and if I could get the engraved rehort that has Rolex, Rolex, Rolex all around it, that was a positive, but I wasn't too worried about that. So this meant that I was looking at watches from 2007 till 2011. So when you think this watch had a 20-odd year run, that's not a lot of watches that are on the market, especially in the UK. Because as soon as I start looking at the UK, I've got 20% VAT that I have to pay. When I started looking properly, the watches varied from about £8,000 to about £13,000. So the market is clearly still settling, and that varied on condition, on set, on coming from a company, on private sellers, etc, etc. But the bottom end of that were typically very scruffy watches with very soft lugs, with over-finished bracelets where the cornet was flat, and so on and so forth. And the top end of that were obviously the pristine examples. And you could get a very, very nice example, pristine example, for around £8,000, but that was more than I wanted to spend. My budget for this originally was about £6,000, maybe £6,500. That's where I was kind of thinking, and as always, you get budget creep with these things. So I found a watch that was advertised for £8,000. It was from, again, a reputable dealer. I managed to negotiate it down to £7,400. It was a 2011, so last model year production run. If I didn't like the watch, there was a 14-day money-back guarantee, no quibbles. I'd never tried this watch on before, bear in mind, but I kind of thought I'd want it. I know the case diameter is 39.5. I know the dimensions are identical to my Pelagos 39 and my two Black Bay 58s. The Pelagos 39 were a bit better for my wrist than the 58s, but being the white dial 42mm more like a 43 or 44, I figured I'd be absolutely fine with this, given it's a 39.5. I thought it would wear more like a 40, 41, and it does. But anyway, I put the money down, £7,500, got the watch. Sadly, it was a bit misrepresented. The lugs were really quite soft. It was worn, but not horrendous. There was a bit more bracelet stretch than I would have wanted, but they were honest about that, and I did ask for pictures around that. The biggest issue which they hadn't spotted was one of the lugs, and I'll put pictures in, had quite a significant flat spot on it, where the owner had obviously knocked it, and where it had been serviced, they just brushed it. There was no laser welding to try and correct that lug, rebuild the lug, refinish that lug. And that was a deal breaker. It looked really quite poor, and you'll see that from the images. So that went back. At the same time that was going back, and I still haven't received the money for that just yet, but it's on the way back and I'll get that this week. Another dealer got in touch with me about this watch, and this is a 2008. It's a full set. It had a service by Rolex 5 days ago, so it's got a 2-year warranty. It got a brand new bracelet from Rolex at the same time, and it looks pristine. It's got all my boxes are ticked on it, including Rolex around the rehort. Absolutely everything ticked. And I'll do a very brief unboxing of it as part of this video. So, being the impulsive person that I am, I put the money down for that. So I am 14 grand out the door, but I know a lot of that will come back in. And this was also 6,750. So they did an absolutely belting deal on it. And I was talking to two other dealers at the same time, and they both wanted £7,500 to £8,000 for their watches. So this is this is in better condition in their watches, and it had a service which theirs didn't have from Rolex. So this would have come with a guarantee from the company, even without the Rolex guarantee. So super happy with that. Bought this watch. I saved myself 650 quid. And what buying the first watch did that I sent back, it absolutely made it 100% sure to me that this is the watch that I wanted. This is absolutely the size and dimensions and wearing experience that I wanted from this watch. So even though I sent that one back, it proved that I wanted this particular model, the 16570. So what we're going to do now is do a very quick unboxing. Not much to see, we'll keep that pretty brief. Come back to the little twist, and then we'll have some conclusions. So here you go. When I'm talking about full set, I truly mean full set. You've got the original card outer box with the actual serial number on and everything. You've got the actual outer box, the real box, the cloth that covers the watch, both swing tags with the original serial number on, all the manuals, the original card dated 2011. As I say, this is a 2008 but sold in 2011. The leather wallet, the warranty card from the service, and then obviously the watch itself, which, as I say, on my 7-inch wrist, wears absolutely amazingly. Brand new bracelet, immaculate. You can see just about the lug chamfers just aren't quite where they should be. So I've got no issue with it. If they can rectify it, great. If they can't, the rest of the watch makes up for it. It's absolutely spot on. And I wish I'd kept I had one of my 58s or something here to compare it with, but it does wear slightly bigger than those. And yeah, I absolutely love it. It's what I wanted the watch to be. So yeah, super chuffed. As I say, more details come in a more detailed review. So the twist. Unfortunately, even though this was serviced by Rolex 4 days ago, I wound the watch 20 times, wore it during the day. It stopped at about midnight that night. I kind of thought that might have been because I should have given it 40 winds. So the next day, wound it 40 times, stopped again at 1 o'clock in the morning. I picked it up, shook it. The rotor is charging the mainspring, so it is coiling the mainspring. But there's obviously some kind of disconnect between the amount of winds I'm doing and the work the rotor is doing to charge that mainspring to retain its power. So even Rolex aren't infallible. This is massively disappointing because I don't want to give it back. I don't want to send it off and lose it for 2 weeks, which is what I'm going to have to do. Thankfully, it's got a Rolex guarantee. I am going to send it to St James's Place, the one in London. I'm going to ask them about the luggers at the same time, actually, and see if they can add the chamfers to them, and if they need to do a bit of laser welding to rebuild them or whatever they need to do. I've got no issues with that, but I would quite like the chamfers on the lugs if they can get them on there. So I will be asking them to have a look at the lugs as well as obviously the movement issue. I know it will be rectified, but pretty disappointed that it got serviced by Rolex 5 days ago and it's not holding its power. So, you know, Zenith, Tudor, Omega, I've had problems with all of those brands come service. Longines, I had a problem with that when I got that watch serviced. This just proves that no watch company is infallible. You know, that there's always human error that can happen with these things. Disappointing, but the research led me to have the warranty there to get the issue resolved. So not the end of the world. So the conclusion, I freaking love it. Like, the idea was to probably sell it when I want to buy my next car, but I would now probably put my car purchase back 2 or 3 months just to probably keep it. It looks fantastic, as you saw from the more close-up pictures. I absolutely don't mind the clasp. The bracelet is brilliant. HoloLinks makes it lighter. I'm not going to talk too much more about it because I'll go into more detail in my proper review. But yeah, I'm over the moon with it. It's freaking fantastic. I really, really like it. I will do a very brief update video when I get the watch back from Rolex. That'll be like 5 minutes. And then I'll do, as I say, a longer term, like 2-3 weeks later maybe, once I've worn the watch a bit more, and just see how it's getting on and see what my thoughts are. As always, if you have any questions, please just let me know and I will reply in the comments. Thank you very much.